stories don't define you. How you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief story maker of Elkins Consulting. When we share stories, whether in our personal or business lives, how we share them makes a difference in how we remember them and in how we're being perceived by the people we're sharing them with. When listening to this podcast, I encourage you to listen to consider your related stories. To listen and think about which stories in your life might have impacted you in a similar way, the ones that created internal messages that may be good or damaging, and the patterns you're experiencing as a result. At the end of this episode, you'll hear about an upcoming opportunity to attend a professional development event unlike any you've experienced. It's called No Longer Virtual, and the 4th annual NLV will be in Chicago on March 12th and 13th, 2020. Listen to the end of this podcast episode to hear about a discount code offer for your registration. The microwave generation. It was somewhere in the mid to late 70s when my father came home with a microwave oven. Definitely one of the first on our block and huge. My father proudly showed it to my mom as the next great invention. He was a gear guy. He loved to see the latest ideas that were coming on the market. And for some reason, we always ended up being one of the first on the block to have whatever it was, whether that was a microwave or one of the brand new PCs. We had no idea what to do with this microwave. The booklet had recipes and settings to defrost meats and soften butter. I remember using it regularly to heat up frozen vegetables, peas, corn, green beans. I also remember experimenting with the defrost feature and failing miserably, cooking to death a beautiful steak or a pound of ground beef to devastating effects. Precious commodities because money was tight. We made scrambled eggs a few times, but cleaning the crusty containers was a hassle, so we didn't do that very often. When my parents splurged on a babysitter for a date night, I remember the excitement of getting to pick out special frozen dinners at the store, made especially for heating in the microwave. Full of salt and fat, they were such a luxury for me and my siblings. Ugh. We would walk through the frozen food aisle, gazing longingly at the variety of Swansons and Banquet options, knowing we had to avoid any in foil containers, which was most of them at that time. When we would find a few, now in microwavable containers, we would excitedly pull them from the reach-in freezer and read the directions on the back of the package. While I was perfectly happy to pick one that read, "Hot and ready to eat in 18 minutes," my younger sister would compromise on her selection to get one that took less time, maybe 15 or 16 minutes. A few years later, as the microwave generation started to take off and find its way through the frozen food aisle, I remember looking at the back of the package and returning it to the freezer if it said anything more than 12 minutes. Those 6 minutes meant hot food even faster. It was also a signal, now that I can see it from a few decades into the future, that our tolerance for waiting for anything had dropped dramatically in a very short amount of time. In our house now, we don't use the microwave for TV dinners or other prepared food, except for the occasional Hot Pocket snuck into the house by one of our boys. But we do use it very carefully to defrost meats, fish, to warm up leftovers and frozen peas, and to soften butter and maybe boil water. When we upgraded our old microwave a couple of years ago, I was pleasantly surprised to find the technology had improved so much that I could now boil water in under 3 minutes. Oh dear. This is why I call my generation the microwave generation. Every time we improve our technology and make things move faster, we decrease our tolerance and patience for waiting. You do not want to see me at SeaWorld or Legoland these days. What about you? Have you noticed a decrease in your tolerance for waiting for anything? What do you attribute that to? Do you find it more and more difficult to settle in and wait for things? I noticed a while ago that people, myself included, avoid boredom by picking up their devices, their phone, their laptop, their tablet, when they're waiting for anything even if they know it's going to be just a minute or two. My go-to is whatever version of solitaire is handy, or maybe scrolling through Facebook, checking my email. What we're doing, though, is limiting our opportunities to be mindful. We're limiting our opportunity to explore our thoughts and let our minds wander. Why is that important? I recently read an article by Jamie Ducharme on the Time website about boredom and its relationship to creativity and innovation. The author suggested that one of the critical factors in our lack of creativity is the fact that we have so much distraction available to us that we're rarely bored. The quote from the article was at the very beginning, the one that caught my attention. If you're waiting for brilliance to strike, try getting bored first. That's the takeaway of a study published recently in the Journal of Academy of Management Discoveries, which found that boredom can spark individual productivity and creativity. The link to that article is on my blog post associated with this podcast. The author suggested that we allow ourselves to sit with boredom when we experience it, to choose not to pick up our phone while waiting at a railroad crossing or while we're on the toilet. He suggested that when we allow ourselves to be bored for a little while, our brains start to wake up again, to start that slow whirring of an idea, to begin to take a detour from our regular patterns of thought and explore different perspectives. It gives our brain the space to be creative again. Now, distraction isn't necessarily the opposite of focus, and mindfulness isn't actually about focus specifically. Mindfulness is about allowing your thoughts to shift while coming back periodically to the moment, to pay attention to your physical body, and to change your relationship with those thoughts that cross your mind. My friend Shelley Brown talks about mindfulness in a truly applied, accessible way. She suggests that when we stop to consider where our thoughts come from, to take a few moments to think about that thought from the perspective of someone on the outside looking in, we can see the reality behind the thought, which may be totally based in fear, unrealistic in the assumptions we're making, and damaging to our relationships with ourselves and others. Maybe if we give ourselves opportunities to be bored, we can also take a little time between a frustrating experience or conversation and how we choose to respond to it. There's that moment, after all, between stimulus and response, where we can choose how we see that stimulus. When something happens, like waking up to 6 inches of snow and single-digit temperatures in April, we can choose how we respond to it. I can choose to see it as negative, positive, or neutral. Now, I have to admit, my first reaction is usually, no, I'm so sick of winter. But if I take a moment to consider how I want to respond, I realize the weather isn't good or bad, it just is. And since I have no control over that, I have to choose how to respond for my own well-being. I think it's important to allow ourselves a negative response sometimes, at least for a few seconds. But after taking a little bit of time to be mindful of our emotions, we do have a choice. So the next time you're waiting in line for your Starbucks pumpkin spice latte, waiting for the download of the latest operating system update, or waiting for the water to boil in the microwave to make tea, try not to open the game or email or social media app on your phone. Instead, let your mind wander. Let thoughts come and go like clouds shifting overhead. Maybe, just maybe, you'll have an aha moment, a brilliant idea, a realization about how to solve a major problem you've been grappling with. Use that short attention span to practice mindfulness. Rather than finding distraction while you're waiting, try being bored. Yes, really. It may be just the thing to help you find what you're looking for. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. I'd like to invite you to join me and an extraordinary group of professionals at the 2020 4th Annual No Longer Virtual Conference on March 12th and 13th in Chicago. The common characteristics of people who attend are curiosity, compassion, and an entrepreneurial mindset. Whether you are self-employed, have a small business, or innovate within an organization, this conference will bring you relevant, engaging sessions, and you'll be surrounded by some of the most wicked smart, generous, creative, supportive professionals around. It's limited to 50 participants, and you'll have the opportunity to truly connect and build strong relationships. The best part, you'll avoid the after-conference hangover by remaining in close contact with your network after the event. Since early registration has ended, I'd like to offer you a $100 discount from the full price. Use the code NLVFRIEND. And if you make an arrangement with me to register 2 or more guests, I'll offer a discount code for more off of each of your registrations. There are only 12 spots left, so register today at elkinsconsulting.com. I hope to see you at NLV Chicago 2020, investing in yourself, taking the steps necessary to take action toward your dreams, and building and nurturing your network that can help you get there. Register at elkinsconsulting.com. Thank you for listening to Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Share Them Will. Please visit my website for more podcast episodes, blog posts, and information about how I can help you develop and share your stories at elkinsconsulting.com.
Now listen to me, honey, while I say, how could you tell me that you're going away? Don't say